Good day guys and welcome back to your English Aussie. Today we've got a lot to talk about in tactical and statistical observations for this game week. Of course we will be going through all the tactical observations from the game this week. We will be going through the statistical best player picks and my thoughts on that. And we will just do a quick rundown at the end of how my game week's gone so far. 91 points and up to 59k, and some thoughts on who I think is a good shout going forwards. Just quickly at the beginning, I'd like to thank one of my subscribers, Finners, who has done the thumbnail for this video. If you guys like it, let me know below in the comments. If you prefer the old one, also let me go in the comments. Either way, thanks, Finners. I really appreciate the time that you spent doing that. You are the GOAT. So, getting straight into it, let's talk about West Ham v Liverpool. 5-0 win for Liverpool, who just looked fantastic in that game. We did discuss the game week before that West Ham were missing two of their central midfielders, with CHE and Dominguez injured. Soler did manage to start for West Ham alongside Paqueta, but if anything, that did just play into the discussions we've been having this season about West Ham being a very slow in transition defence type team. And sort of a team that didn't work very well defending in transition. Liverpool being a team that do attack with such pace, energy and speed, I think caused West Ham a lot of problems. Also, not having Souček in that midfield, which is sort of West Ham's outball from the defence to be able to maintain possession. He often wins the headers, flick-ons, or controls the ball down, was a big miss for West Ham. I mean, this game played out pretty much how we called it, to be honest. Liverpool ran absolute riot, and clearly the correct call with Salah as captain this week. It was a big swing for those people who did choose Palmer, and I did give my thoughts on why I thought Salah was the better captaincy shout, and the way that teams have played Palmer over the last few game weeks, and why I thought that Ipswich game they might play him in the way that they did. So yeah, again, good call for the Salah captaincy this week. Another thing that I would note, that just Liverpool, and I think this will be a bit of a theme that we'll talk about across a few of the games this week. Liverpool had a lot of pace and energy in midfield, had a lot of players that were willing to sort of run in behind. All of their front three are running in behind. Curtis Jones is coming in from the midfield, running on behind. Even Andy Robinson is sort of pushing forwards and getting those higher runs. Liverpool just had so much energy, and a team like West Ham, who do sort of struggle in that transition, don't have that high energy and pace, is someone that we've seen struggling defensively in the Premier League this season as a whole. I think you see the teams with the most energy and pace and ability in transition have been performing far better this year. Another, obviously, a big shout out this week has been Trent Alexander-Arnold. Obviously a deflected goal this week, a little bit lucky. But he is starting to get into slightly more advanced positions. I do think this week he wasn't super advanced, and again, probably still isn't taking up those positions that he was in the days of Klopp. But Slot is, I don't know if this is a tactical decision from Slot, or if Trent is sort of looking to get more involved. Obviously, we've heard his comments on how he wants to be one of the best right backs in the world, win the Ballon d'Or, etc. And I think without those sort of attacking returns, he would struggle to achieve those goals. So perhaps it is something where he is looking to get more into those positions, and it's a conversation that they've had to have around allowing him to have a little bit more freedom. I do think he's still defending in a slightly deeper role than he did before. However, I have noticed Liverpool having to cover him a little bit more in the last couple of games when he does get caught a little bit higher up the pitch. So I do think with Trent now going forwards, that he is someone that we need to look at and think about bringing into our team, especially ahead of that Liverpool double game week in 24 and 25. I know I've spoken previously before about why he wasn't a good option. But with this Saka injury and the money now that we have to spread around our team, I think Trent is someone that we can look to go into just for the potential for that upside if he does get into those more attacking roles that we haven't seen from him this season. I do think he's not an urgent priority if you don't have him in your side, depending on what your defence is at the moment. I think I would look to try and get one Liverpool defender in, but over those next sort of 3 game weeks that Liverpool have, Man United, Forest and Brentford, I think Man United this week is probably the best of those 3 game weeks. So if you don't bring Trent in this week, I think you can potentially wait up till they play Ipswich in game week 23 to bring him in and look to facilitate maybe a Anthony Robinson or potentially a Lewis Hall if you're looking to sort of have some of those cheaper price defenders. Prediction for this week, Salah to return, we did get right. Moving on to the Leicester v Manchester City game, and I thought Manchester City were incredibly lucky not to concede again. It is probably the most defensively fragile I've ever seen them and the most exposed that I've seen them. And it is in transition. And similar to what I've said about West Ham, and the opposite of what I'm saying about Liverpool, is that Man City don't look like they have any energy or legs in that midfield. Kovacic seems to just be getting caught high. He's not able to sort of read the game as well as a Rodri would and be able to plug those holes in between the midfield and defence. Leicester were able to play balls in between the lines, and there was quite a large gap in between their defence and their midfield, and Leicester were sort of able to exploit them and then able to attack at pace after that. I think that was a lot to do with their defensive midfielders, even Rico Lewis when he's inverted into that defensive midfield role from the right back role. They were getting caught out very high, and then they weren't running back in transition with enough pace, with enough energy. With Bernardo Silva and De Bruyne in there as well, like they don't have the legs to be getting back in there as well. And I think that sort of, you're seeing that from Man City, that they don't have that energy in midfield that they need to be able to keep up with these teams that have such sort of high energy presses, high aggressiveness in transition, and that is really where they are struggling. I did think that McAtee, one of the Man City youngsters, showed a lot of really good energy, pace, urgency when coming on, and that is what City needed. And I think that also going forwards, as we talked about last week, they weren't looking to sort of counter quickly as well, and that is again due to that sort of lack of legs in the midfield. So it would be interesting to see whether he does give McAtee a start in the next game week, and perhaps a Foden or a Silva drops down to the bench. I don't think it will happen, but from what I saw tactically from City, I do think that would help their team. Another talking point is just Josko Gvardiol. With Ake coming off injured, that obviously brought Kyle Walker on at right back. Rico Lewis moved out to left back, and Gvardiol moved into that centre back role. At the moment, even when he's playing in that left back role, because Kyle Walker's not playing at right back and Rico Lewis is, what's happening is Gvardiol's sort of slotting into that back three and not pushing on as high up the left wing as Rico Lewis inverts into defensive midfield. So until Walker really comes back into that team at right back, Gvardiol's sort of runs and attacking perspectives have just not been as good as they have been previously. And I think after this nice run for City over the next 3 weeks with West Ham, Brentford and Ipswich, he's probably someone that I'd be looking to move on. We did go both teams to score in that game. Still think that was a good shout, but yeah, obviously City got away with it, I think, a little bit. Everton v Nottingham Forest. We went for a Nottingham Forest clean sheet. We've spoken about Everton really struggling from an offensive perspective so far this year, and we'll talk a little bit about how they can improve there. But yeah, I think it was generally a relatively easy clean sheet for Nottingham Forest, even with them missing Murillo at that centre-back position, who has been so fantastic for them this year, and would be a bit of a loss, I think, if he is out for a little bit longer, and I will keep you guys updated in the team news section on our deadline stream as to whether he will be available for the weekend's games or not. We did also predict Chris Wood. This was a good matchup for him against Everton, that he would be very involved, and the way that Everton defend meant that Wood would be more involved in Forest's sort of attacking game plan, and that was really the case. He got a goal and an assist. Yeah, really nice performance for Chris Wood. He keeps ticking along nicely despite the statistics and what they may say, just because tactically he's such a focal point of that Forest attack. Really things do sort of end up with Chris Wood. Another thing that I think is an interesting thought going forwards is Morgan Gibbs-White and Anthony Elanga, and whether they are potential options going forwards in FPL. Forest obviously are very good in transition, at breaking, at countering with a lot of energy. Again, a common trend against a lot of the top teams that we're seeing, or a lot of teams that have looked good in these sort of transition games. And Elanga and Morgan Gibbs-White have been returning quite frequently from Nottingham Forest. Elanga's been in a really nice run of form lately, and I think they're people that potentially at this sort of mid-price midfielder role that we could start to look at going forwards. They don't have that sort of statistical, and as you'll go on to see when we go through the statistical analysis of players, they don't have those high statistics that is what really bring in a lot of people to buy. But from a tactical standpoint, they could be some really interesting picks and potentially some nice differentials going forwards, especially with Nottingham Forest's really nice fixtures coming up. So definitely some players to think about. And I think they're allowed that sort of freedom going forwards by sort of the Elliot Anderson and the two Nottingham Forest players in that deep defensive pivot. Again, lots of energy and legs in the midfield, enabling those more attacking players to be thriving and getting forwards, knowing that they've got coverage behind them. So yeah, I think a really key trend that we're seeing evolve in the league here is to have that sort of energy and pace in midfield. We'll see that again with Newcastle shortly. How can Everton improve offensively? Obviously, they're teams that we've been targeting from a defensive standpoint lately. I do think with Broja coming back, he will give them a little bit more physicality up front. Hopefully they'll be able to sort of hold up the ball a little better with their direct style of play. He does seem to have a little bit of a bit about him in sort of dribbling and taking the ball up and holding it up. And hopefully if Dwight McNeil can sort of come back to full fitness, he can show a little bit more sort of cutting edge and ability to make that final pass for Everton, which they have been lacking in the final third. Moving on to Palace versus Southampton, we went for 2 or less goals in this game. You would think that that would probably happen in a game involving Southampton and Palace, but Palace continued with their formation where they've been so good, the 3-4-2-1 with Eze and Sarr in behind Mateta. As we've spoken about, I think Sarr's dynamic running is really key to sort of his attacking output and also his threat. Eze obviously plays in that slightly deeper role, a bit more creative. He has a bit more assist threat, but as we saw from that game, is able to take sort of those longer range shots from outside the box because he has that good technique, that great ability in his shot, and scored a lovely goal. For me, like I said, I still prefer Sarr as the option due to the positions he picks up through being the one that runs past the striker and therefore has a bit more goal threat, whereas I'd say Eze has a little bit more assist threat, and the 5 points for the midfielder versus the 3, plus Sarr being 0.9 or 0.8 million cheaper, just makes me think he's a slightly better option than Eze. Obviously picked up the more points this week though, so not that Eze is not an option, I just prefer Sarr for those reasons. Southampton again, I think are looking much improved defensively with their ability now to be able to play out long from the back. Ramsdale's been hitting a bit longer balls, Harwood Bellis, etc. Paul Onuachu playing in the forward line for them, is able to sort of hold up those balls, win some of those long balls, bring it down and keep the play. And that's actually enabled Southampton to be a little bit more of an offensive threat. Also, Tyler Dibbling played in the 10 role for a little while. I thought he was really nice in there. So Southampton are starting to work out how to carry a little bit more attacking threat. I still see them as a team to target for defenders. I don't expect them to score too many goals. But I do think their defence is also improving, and they are improving a little bit under Vitor Pereira. Moving on to Tottenham v Wolves. Tottenham again missing a lot of defenders. I did go both teams to score. I think that was a little bit of an easy one to pick with two poor defences at the moment. And my first call out is Brennan Johnson played an excellent game, and I've been sort of not slagging him off, but maybe a little bit slagging him off for late. For just not being involved in the build-up, not being a great option in that sort of wing role. He's not really creating a lot of threats. However, I just thought, and I did see a little bit of it in Tottenham's last game, but I wasn't willing to call it out based off the fact that I think he'd been so poor previously. But he was much more involved in the build-up. He was showing some signs of creativity, and I thought he had a really great game for Spurs, and if he can play more like that going forwards, then I do expect him to sort of take some minutes away from Maddison, which, to be honest, almost makes them both worse options. I sort of felt like Maddison was getting his way into that Tottenham starting 11 as being sort of, that's their best 11 with Son on the left, Cooley on the right, and Maddison in the 10. If Brennan Johnson's able to play nicely and be more dynamic in that right wing role, able to get more involved in the build-up, then I think he definitely gives a different fluidity to Spurs, a little bit more pace as well, and yeah, it could be a nice option. So let's see how Spurs go over the next couple of weeks. I think Johnson and Maddison, for me, just both being the minutes and rotation risk that they are, no longer, I think, are good FPL options. But if someone manages to bed down the role, or someone picks up an injury, one of those two could look like a good option going forwards. Spurs' fixtures pick up from game week 22, so we've got a couple of weeks here to just have a look at it and see how it evolves. Obviously, Spurs still frail defensively. It was good that Dragusin was still available for them, because him playing at the back with Archie Gray, he was able to have a little bit of physicality in there. But yeah, Tottenham obviously missing a lot of key players with Van der Ven, Davies, Romero, Vicario all out at the moment. So yeah, still struggling from a defensive standpoint, and coming up against Newcastle, who are looking so good at the moment. Yeah, I struggle to see them failing to concede next week against Newcastle. CUNHA ban incoming, one more week. So the news has now been announced, and you will see in my key news that's flashing up on the screen here, CUNHA has been banned for 2 games. I don't know whether I should give my personal opinion on that. I think that's it's a weak ban. Like, normally you'd get, for violent conduct, sent off and have a 3-game ban in the Premier League if you're red carded during the game. Obviously, FA had the scope to give whatever ban they felt necessary. I think a 2-game ban was pretty weak. However, great news for CUNHA owners means he'll only miss 1 Premier League game, with the other one being in the Cup in midweek. And with him picking up a slight niggle during that game against Spurs and coming off at half-time, it is possible that he might not have been available for Wolves' fixture next week anyway against Nottingham Forest, and it is likely that he will be back for the fixture against Newcastle the week after. So yeah, very beneficial for Wolves, and I think if you do have CUNHA, that means to me that I would look at actually potentially just holding him through this game week with the form that he's been in. I don't think there are clear superb options for strikers. I would say, and we'll obviously go on to them later, you've got Isak, who's a runaway number 1, and then you sort of have Jackson, whose minutes are a little bit lower. Still a nice option. Chris Wood, maybe Wissa, potentially. Obviously, again, recording this before the Arsenal-Brentford game, possibly maybe a Gabriel Jesus if he can find some form. So yeah, I think that was the sort of thoughts from that Tottenham Wolves game. I still think the Wolves defence, not somebody to go in for. I know Aït-Nouri picked up 2 assists in that, but from a defensive standpoint, they don't look fantastic. And yeah, their fixture run is obviously starting to turn a bit difficult now. So going forwards, I wouldn't look to be going into that Wolves defence, and I'd probably be looking to sell an Aït-Nouri if you do have him. Fulham went a little bit rogue on my pick this week, and for a Robinson to return, given the high positions he's been playing in for Fulham, did manage to get an assist. And I was considering a return a clean sheet as well, sort of giving myself a secondary option. I think kudos to Bournemouth, they're still pushing on and playing despite having only 13 first team players available for that game. They've had so many injuries, but yeah, they're just finding solutions and finding new players to sort of step into the roles. I thought Dango Ouattara had a really good game for them, and is honestly, when we go on to statistics, is the XG, XA merchant at the moment. I think he has maybe the second best expected goals and assists per 90 in the whole Premier League. Well, maybe for players that have played a certain amount of minutes, but yeah, just honestly crazy statistics for Bournemouth. But yeah, I thought I had a really nice game. Not sure I would pick him up as an FPL option, but definitely someone if you're looking to go for a real wild differential that you could look at going forwards. Robinson again played in that basically left wing role almost for Fulham, very high up. I do think Fulham didn't have the greatest game defensively in that formation. However, Robinson was in such good attacking positions that with Fulham's good fixture run coming up, if he continues to play that high, he's definitely going to get a lot of returns for us. He's obviously got 7 assists this year so far already, which is the most for any defender in the Premier League. So he's definitely someone that I have at the top of my list for bringing into the FPL team. Smith Rowe fitness issues, just something to keep an eye out for. He's obviously struggled with fitness over the last few seasons and still finding that difficult going forwards. So for me, probably not somebody I'd be looking at bringing into that team, being rotated through that Fulham team. Iwobi's probably the guy I'd look at. Moving on to the final couple of games, last few games. I went with Chelsea to score 2+ goals against Ipswich. Obviously not the result that many people expected at all. Ipswich setting up in their new sort of 5-4-1 formation are allowing them to be a little bit better defensively in transition, but I think still conceding plenty of chances, and probably still the team that I would look to target from an offensive standpoint. Chelsea made a lot of rotations to their side, obviously with Jackson coming out from Nkunku, Gusto coming out as well from Disasi. Sorry if I butchered that name. And what I thought was interesting was Enzo played again in the pivot with Caicedo. So with Lavia out, it's clear that Enzo and Caicedo are the sort of main guys in that pivot, and he doesn't really have any other options that he's looking at playing there. That is good news for those of you that are Enzo owners. I think he's sort of a lock in that side. He's again pushing on into those attacking midfield roles. He's on set pieces. He does take some corners. I think he's still a really nice option for those of you that have got him, or even that don't have him and are looking at some of those cheaper price options in the midfield. CRY again inverting into those sort of higher areas definitely could become an option in that Chelsea defence if you are trusting of them to potentially be able to keep some clean sheets over their nice fixture run coming up. I know having that 2-0 loss to Ipswich is probably a bit of a bummer for those of you owning any Chelsea defenders, but I do think CRY has that attacking potential. So he's probably the only one I would go for in that side, with Gusto getting rotated, showing that he is not a minute's certainty. And finally, just on the Palmer captaincy, I did discuss how teams have been looking to sort of man mark Palmer a little bit to sort of push him out wider. and make him involved a little bit less in the game. I think Ipswich started off in that style, but then sort of moved away from that aspect, and that did allow Palmer to get a little bit more on the ball. And actually, I thought he did create chances. Obviously, had an assist ruled out, and had a good strike saved by the Ipswich goalie Walton, who was incredible, can I add, for this game week, who just came back from an injury. He looked absolutely fantastic, and yeah, I think he's kept that place in his team for next week. But yeah, I couldn't see that being the game to go Palmer over Salah with the form Salah had been in, and obviously the West Ham issues in midfield and transition that they've had. I really saw tactically as that Liverpool game was a much better game for Captain Speed's perspective. I did think that Palmer would get a return. I wasn't sure whether it'd be an assist or a goal. I thought it would be more likely it would be an assist. However, yeah, Ipswich obviously managed to hold out for the 2-0 win and their first ever home win this season in the Premier League. Man United Newcastle, 2-0 to Newcastle. Newcastle absolutely destroyed Man United for the first 30 minutes of that game, leading to Amorim subbing off Xerxes after I think it was 29 minutes, something around that point, and bringing on Mainu for a little bit more control in the midfield. And again, one of the things, the common themes we've been talking about in the Premier League is the energy and pace Newcastle have in that midfield and that dynamic running. Joelinton, Murphy, Anthony Gordon, Bruno Guimaraes, all really energetic, high energy, fast paced midfielders, brought so much energy to that game that United just were overrun with Casemiro and Eriksen in the midfield. Just didn't have the legs to deal with that. And yeah, just another way that we've seen this same thing, this common trend in the Premier League, these teams that are able to just have more energy and running and drive than the other teams are really getting on top in these games. I thought Lewis Hall also had an absolutely sensational game for Newcastle. He got into some incredible attacking positions. He's on set pieces, he's on corners, had a couple of shots. He was getting in box, getting some touches in the box. The more I've had time to sort of digest this game, the more I think Lewis Hall's sort of gone up, in my opinion, as a great option, as a cheap defensive option. I think the Newcastle fixtures are good, probably more from an attacking standpoint over the next few games than a defensive one. So again, like I think Gordon and Murphy also nice as well alongside Isak. But yeah, I just think Lewis Hall from the attacking positions he's got into at 4.7 mil in a good Newcastle team. They've kept 3 clean sheets or two or three clean sheets on the bounce now. I think it's definitely an option that you want to look into alongside Anthony Robinson. Finally, Villa v Brighton, and I know this section's taken a little bit longer than usual this week. And guys, if you have enjoyed it, please remember to please subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and yeah, it will really help, obviously, this small channel continue to grow. We're doing really well. We've got over 800 subscribers now, and we're going to push on to that 1K, hopefully, this season. Thank you all to those that are still watching, and if you can watch to the end of these videos, it does really help with the YouTube algorithm and with it being shown to more people. So I do really appreciate those of you that watch to the end, even if you just keep it running, that's fine. Yeah, Villa v Brighton, I obviously didn't update the commentary here. It was probably one of those late games I haven't got around to. I thought Morgan Rogers obviously brilliant. However, he did pick up his 5th yellow card, meaning that he will be suspended for next week when Villa take on Leicester. That is unfortunate. I thought that was a really nice game week for Rogers. He would have been very good in transition there. However, Ollie Watkins will be starting again. Duran, with the red card he picked up in the last game, will be out for one more Premier League game and then back for the Everton game. So we will see who will be starting in that Everton game. Will be really interesting. it probably gives you a little bit of time to think through whether you want Watkins or not. If you want to go early into him before the Leicester game, or if you're going to wait and see, 23 would be a nicer time when the Villa run is West Ham, Wolves, Ipswich, Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Brentford, from 23 to 28. Brighton, again, I said it a few times now, I just feel João Pedro doesn't feel that comfortable in the 9 role up front. Fantastic assist off the butt, but I did think like this was a game where he could be a little bit more involved. I was thinking he'd play in the 10 behind the striker, but I thought Villa do concede those sort of chances. Have been conceding goals this season, and I think the call to keep João Pedro in or start him this week, which we did say in our live stream to a lot of people, was a good choice. 2-2, not too much more for me to talk about from this game. I think the final game of the week is Brentford v Arsenal. We'll probably just talk about that on the live stream this week, and sort of we can go through the tactical observations there. We will now move on to the statistical analysis. We'll try and run through this a little bit quicker, given that I know you guys probably don't want to sit through too long of videos. I've obviously talked about a lot of these players already. Lewis Hall, Gabriel's probably one of my main picks to come in. Great attacking threat for Arsenal. Considered possibly set-piece merchants at the moment. I think he's my #1 defender to be bringing in. Alongside him is Anthony Robinson, the great attacking positions we've been picking up for Fulham, along with this sort of new really high, almost winger-like role he's been picking up. 7 assists so far in the Premier League, most of any defender, and obviously some good statistics to go with. Next up on my list would actually be Lewis Hall, 4.7 million. He's looked really nice for Newcastle going forwards. A few clean sheets coming up. He did manage 12 points this week with the assist and the bonus. Looks in great form in a team that is in great form going forwards. Next up is Milenkovic. I do think he's also a nice option. Obviously a threat from corners for Nottingham Forest, who are a great defence. Why I probably actually have him slightly below Lewis Hall. There is a potential that Murillo could be out injured. I will give you that news on the live stream for the press conference updates that we will go through. Yeah, that could be, make it a little bit more difficult for Nottingham Forest, who are usually a defensively very solid team. Pedro Porro is sell for me. Tottenham obviously struggling defensively. Joshua Gvardiol, we've talked about how I'd give him a few more game weeks till Ipswich and then look to move off him if things haven't improved for City and his positioning hasn't improved. Munoz of Palace, I do like, gets into some high positions, but not yet for me. Chelsea this week, I would look to move to him potentially in game week 21, but I do think there are some better options out there at the moment in the form of Robinson and Hall at that price point, and even Trent Alexander-Arnold I would probably go for before a Daniel Munoz of Crystal Palace. Do think Trent's starting to get into some nicer positions. I have now shifted my stance on him to be someone that I would look to be getting in coming up to Liverpool's double game week in 24-25. Milos Kerkez of Bournemouth, give him one more week against Everton if you've got him. Otherwise I probably wouldn't be bringing him in. But if you've got him, I think clean sheet against Everton is obviously always an option. Moving on to the midfields, Mo Salah and Cole Palmer still the main guys for me. Mo is just unbelievable, so if you don't have him, come on, give up, bring him in. Just let go and bring him in. Palmer obviously second on that for me. Next, probably my favourites are Anthony Gordon at Newcastle. I think they're obviously in great form, and their next couple of games are Tottenham, who are lacking a lot of defence. I did think the Wolves would be without CUNHA, but it looks like CUNHA will be back for that Wolves game. But again, the Wolves defensively have not been looking fantastic. Then Bournemouth and Southampton after that. I think Gordon's been in nice form with 4 goals and 4 assists so far this season. and relatively nicely up there in statistics wise. Phil Foden still stays in there for me for Man City. I think if you've got him in there, he's a hold. I'm not sure. He does have the biggest upside. I don't know whether I'd be buying him at the moment, but I think if you got a Foden, you would have gone for him maybe last week or the week before, and he'd be somebody I'd definitely hold going through to Ipswich. As I've spoken about before, I think the midfielders at the moment, there's no real standout for me at that sort of middling price point. And I think if you do have any of these players in orange, I would hold on to them because I think moving between them, you just can't be confident that one is a better option than another for any given game week, and it's not worth the transfer to move off who you're believing in at the moment. Some of the reds, obviously different options. I think at this lower price point, Morgan Rogers is the best option for me. 6 goals, 3 assists so far, pivotal for Aston Villa. Obviously don't buy him this week with him being suspended against Leicester, but after that I definitely look to be bringing him in. Everton, Arsenal in 21-22, perhaps if you have bigger fires in your team, you can go without him, but then from 23, West Ham, Wolves, Ipswich, Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Brentford, a really nice run of fixtures for Morgan Rogers to hopefully pick up some more attacking returns. Also at that price point, again, Jacob Murphy, we've been talking about the high energy that we have in that Newcastle midfield. He's been fantastic for them. Just a little bit less big on him than I am for Anthony Gordon, just due to the lower minutes that he does get, and obviously Harvey Barnes raring to go in the back room. So yeah, Jacob Murphy, I like him. He's looked very good for Newcastle. Great energy, great pace, very good in transition with some nice fixtures. If you don't have the money for an Anthony Gordon, that's where I would look to go. Moving on to the forwards, Alexander Isak is the #1 clear favourite for me. I don't think much more needs to be said about him. Nicholas Jackson at Chelsea, if you've got him, I'd definitely be still keeping him. I think he's going to start next week. I think that was a bit of a rotation from Maresca. It didn't obviously work. They lost 2-0 to Ipswich. I expect him to be back in the team next week. He also managed to make it through without getting a ban after those 19 game weeks, so he will now have until game week 32 to not pick up 10 yellow cards. So no concern for a suspension for Jackson. And the other one that I've got in green is a Chris Wood at Nottingham Forest. They've got a really nice fixture run coming up. Wolves, Liverpool, Southampton, Bournemouth, Brighton. It's quite nice every other week, sort of quite a nice fixture for them. Chris Wood obviously in fantastic form, tactically very key for Nottingham Forest. Some other options just to consider. Mateus Cunha, I think if you've got him, definitely hold him. I think he's a difficult one because of their fixtures. I don't know whether I'd be looking to bring him in. But if you are looking for a forward and you've already got an Isak and a Wood, for example, and you can't afford a Jackson or a Watkins, I think Cunha and Whistler are probably your best couple of options. Raul Jimenez here is sort of a discussion point. His minutes are obviously a risk with Rodrigo Muniz. However, Fulham do have a really nice fixture run. Jimenez obviously scoring last week as well, I think means he might be likely to keep his starting place against Ipswich, and then with West Ham and Leicester after that is a really nice 3 fixtures, and even Man United after that is quite nice going forwards. Whistler again, as I've been saying, I think is slightly fixture proof, but Southampton and Man City are quite nice fixtures. Liverpool after that maybe a little bit more difficult, and then Crystal Palace. So for me, definitely also someone I would consider going forwards. Final guy that I'd like to talk about is Gabby Jesus of Arsenal. Statistics are reasonable and obviously picked up a hat-trick in the Cup and 2 goals and an assist a couple of weeks ago before blanking last week for Arsenal against Ipswich. If Arsenal can get a little bit more open play threat, maybe Arteta becomes slightly more expansive, trying to find solutions without Saka. Jesus could be a really lovely differential. We'll see this week against Brentford how he goes. But yeah, definitely someone for me to keep an eye on and would be on my watch list over the upcoming weeks for Arsenal. Brighton, Tottenham, Villa, Wolves over the next 4. Definitely all teams that do concede goals. So yeah, could be a good few fixtures for Arsenal from an attacking perspective. Guys, if you've watched this far, thank you very much. Please give the channel a subscribe, like the video. Please help our channel grow. Putting in a lot of work over this sort of time to get out some good videos for you. We're obviously doing fantastic, up to 59k in the world. I will just quickly show my team here and how we did this week. 91 points, made some really great tactical decisions. Benching Bowen, obviously a great call. Timber and Jesus still to play, so could get a few more points going forwards. Yeah, just some really nice picks for this game week. And up to 59k. I think this sort of tactical mindset has been really helpful. So please do give a subscribe. Stay up to date with my videos. On my deadline stream, I'll again be doing team reviews. So if you do want your team reviewed, post your team ID in the chat. I will chat through with you transfer plans, thoughts on your team, whatever you'd like to discuss on your team. Happy to go through with you. It was a great stream last week. Really enjoyed that sort of conversation at the end with Levu around thoughts on FPL and sort of strategy and things like that. If you haven't seen my chip strategy video, I do have all the best game weeks for to play each chip, which I think is quite key to have a think about over the upcoming weeks. I think one of my most popular and viewed videos so far. So give that a view. I'll put a link to it up above as this video comes to an end. Thank you so much for watching. Please continue to support the channel. I really appreciate all of you guys, and I hope you have a great game week. Thanks very much. This is your English Aussie, and I'll see you later.